A birthday cake sits untouched in the corner of Riverside Diner, its candles melting slowly while a young woman in a wheelchair stares at the empty chairs around her table. The waitress whispers to the cook, "Her father owns half the county, but he couldn't even show up for her birthday." What happens next will change everything, not just for her, but for a struggling single father who's about to make the simplest, most powerful choice of his life. If you enjoy stories about unexpected connections and second chances, I'd love for you to subscribe. It really helps keep these stories coming. Hit that like button if this caught your attention, and drop a comment below. Where are you listening from today? 26-year-old Victoria Brennan sat alone at a corner booth in Riverside Diner, surrounded by balloons that seemed to mock her solitude. The September afternoon light filtered through the windows, illuminating the decorations she'd requested herself. Because no one else had bothered, her wheelchair was positioned carefully at the table's edge, giving her a clear view of families laughing at nearby tables, children running between booths with the kind of freedom she remembered but could no longer claim. The cake, vanilla with raspberry filling, her absolute favorite, sat untouched, its pink frosting glistening under slowly melting candles. She checked her phone for the fourth time. 3 missed calls from her father, Richard Brennan's assistant, each with the same rehearsed excuse. Business emergency in Tokyo. Critical merger. Shareholders won't wait. Victoria forced herself to set the phone down, her hands trembling as she reached for her coffee cup. Dottie, the diner's longtime waitress, approached with sympathetic eyes that somehow made everything worse. "Honey, can I get you anything else?" Dottie's voice carried the gentle pity Victoria had grown to despise over the past 3 years. Ever since the accident that had stolen her ability to walk and her father's ability to see her as anything other than a problem to manage. Through the window, she watched a battered pickup truck pull into the parking lot. A man emerged, tall, early 30s, with the lean build that came from physical labor rather than gym memberships. From the passenger side bounced a little girl, maybe 7, clutching a stuffed rabbit with one ear barely hanging on. The girl talked animatedly while the man listened with patient attention. Victoria found herself watching as they entered the diner, the man's hand resting protectively on his daughter's shoulder. He glanced around, then counted bills from his wallet, the universal gesture of someone calculating exactly what they could afford. James Mitchell had been counting pennies since his wife Emma died 2 years ago. Today was supposed to be a treat. Sophie had aced her spelling test, and he'd promised grilled cheese sandwiches and maybe one shared milkshake. As they waited to be seated, Sophie tugged his sleeve and pointed across the diner. "Daddy, why is that lady sitting all alone with such a big cake? Why does she look so sad on her birthday?" James followed his daughter's gaze, taking in the expensive clothes, the state-of-the-art wheelchair, the untouched cake, and most strikingly, the expression of profound loneliness on the young woman's face. It was a look he recognized from his own mirror. "Sophie, that's not really our business," he said gently. But Sophie, with fearless childhood compassion, had already slipped from his grasp and was walking directly toward the woman. James hurried after her, arriving just as Sophie stopped beside the stranger's table. "Excuse me," Sophie said with complete sincerity. "Why are you sad on your birthday? Birthdays are supposed to be happy." Victoria looked up, startled, and found herself staring into the most honest, unjudging eyes she'd encountered in months. The little girl wasn't staring at her wheelchair or calculating her net worth. She was simply seeing another person having a bad day. James reached them, embarrassment coloring his face. "Sophie, you can't just walk up to people. "I'm so sorry, ma'am." But something in the woman's expression stopped him. Her face had transformed from guarded sadness to something softer. "No, it's okay. I was just wishing I had someone to share my cake with." Sophie's eyes widened with excitement. "We love cake, right, Daddy?" James hesitated, scanning the woman's designer clothes, the wheelchair that probably cost more than his truck, the diamond studs that could pay his rent for months. But there was something raw and real in her expression that made him recognize a kindred spirit. "Only if you're sure," he said carefully. Victoria gestured to the empty chairs. "Please, this is already the best birthday invitation I've gotten all day." They slid into the booth, Sophie vibrating with excitement as Dottie brought extra plates. Sophie launched into introductions. "I'm Sophie Mitchell, and this is my daddy, James, and this is Mr. Hopscotch." She held up the rabbit. "And he's very wise because Mommy gave him to me before she went to heaven." The casual mention hit Victoria with unexpected force. "I'm Victoria, and Mr. Hopscotch looks like he's been on many adventures." As they ate, conversation flowed easily. Victoria learned James worked 2 jobs since Emma died in a car accident. Sophie learned Victoria used to compete in equestrian events. They laughed and debated cake flavors. For 20 minutes, Victoria forgot about her absent father and empty penthouse. "Maybe you could ride again," Sophie said thoughtfully. "My teacher told us about therapy horses that help people who can't walk." The innocent suggestion landed with unexpected weight. No one had suggested she might return to what she loved most. "That's actually a really interesting idea," Victoria said slowly. James caught her eye, and something passed between them. Understanding, recognition. Then the diner's bell chimed. A man in an expensive suit entered. Marcus, her father's head of security. His eyes found Victoria, and his expression hardened as he took in the scene. He approached carrying a wrapped box and envelope. "Miss Brennan, your father sends his regrets and this gift." He placed them on the table, then leaned close enough that only Victoria could hear. "He also wanted me to remind you that the shareholders' dinner is Friday. He expects you presentable and focused, not distracted by temporary friendships with inappropriate people." His eyes flicked to James. "He's built an empire so you'd never need to settle for this." Victoria's face went pale. Victoria thanked James and Sophie, promising to see them again, though the words felt hollow under Marcus's watchful glare. As James's truck pulled away, Marcus blocked her wheelchair. "Your father asked me to remind you. The shareholders' dinner is Friday. He needs you presentable, not socializing with charity cases." He glanced toward the departing truck. "That man is nobody, a laborer with debt. Not our kind of people." Victoria's jaw tightened. "Maybe that's exactly why I like talking to him." Marcus's expression softened slightly. He'd known her since childhood. "He loves you, Victoria. He just doesn't know how to show it anymore. Not since the accident." Victoria returned to her penthouse. Cold, modern, perfect. The unopened gift sat on her lap. Inside, a diamond necklace worth more than James probably made in 2 years, and a card with her father's signature, clearly signed by his assistant. She wheeled to the window, overlooking Millbrook's lights, and noticed something tucked in her wheelchair's side pouch. Sophie's stuffed rabbit, forgotten. An address label read, "Apartment 4C, Riverside Towers." The poorest housing complex in town, the same complex her father's company had once tried to demolish for luxury condos. Victoria stared at the rabbit, then at her phone, then made a decision that terrified her. The next morning, Victoria navigated her accessible van to Riverside Towers. The building looked worse in daylight. Crumbling brick, rusted fire escapes, windows patched with cardboard. The wheelchair ramp was broken. A resident helped her navigate the crumbling concrete. She found apartment 4C and knocked. James opened the door in work clothes, surprise crossing his face. "Victoria? I didn't expect—" Sophie's squeal interrupted him. "Mr. Hopscotch, you found him!" She rushed forward, hugging Victoria's chair. "I wanted to return him," Victoria said. But her eyes scanned the tiny apartment. Mismatched furniture, Sophie's drawings covering water-stained walls, textbooks on the counter. James was taking night classes. A photo of a smiling woman with Sophie's eyes sat on a shelf. Emma. Sophie insisted Victoria stay for breakfast. They had cereal and shared stories. Victoria noticed past due bills tucked under a magnet, the way James carefully portioned the milk, how Sophie's shoes were held together with glue. But she also noticed the laughter, the warmth, the love that filled the cramped space more fully than her penthouse had ever been filled. "You're different from what I expected," James admitted as they sat at the small table. "What did you expect?" Victoria asked. "Someone who'd never come to a place like this." Victoria looked around the apartment, at the makeshift bookshelf made from crates, the blanket fort in the corner, Sophie's spelling test with a gold star on the refrigerator. "This feels more like a home than where I live." The honesty in her voice surprised them both. As Victoria prepared to leave, Sophie asked, "Can you come to my school presentation on Friday? It's about heroes. I'm doing mine about Daddy." Victoria's heart swelled until she remembered. Friday. The shareholders' dinner. Her father's most important event of the year, where he planned to announce her as the future face of Brennan Industries. She opened her mouth to explain, but saw Sophie's hopeful face. "I'll try," she said softly. James caught her eye. He knew what "I'll try" meant from wealthy people. It meant no. As Victoria's van pulled away, Sophie waved from the window. James's phone rang. His boss's voice was curt. "Mitchell, you're needed for overtime Friday night. It's mandatory, or you're fired." 3 days later, Victoria visited her father's headquarters, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that seemed designed to intimidate. Employees whispered as she passed, their eyes following her wheelchair with a mixture of pity and curiosity. Her father's assistant, Bethany, greeted her with practiced warmth. "Victoria, your father's in Shanghai, but he wanted me to review your speech for Friday's dinner. The press will be there. It's crucial you represent the family properly." Victoria tried to discuss postponing, but Bethany cut her off with a perfectly manicured hand. "This dinner determines whether the board trusts you as the company's future. Your father has worked too hard to have you distracted by temporary friendships." The emphasis on temporary wasn't subtle. In the executive break room, Victoria overheard 2 board members talking. "Did you see Brennan's daughter at that dump diner last week, with some construction worker and his kid?" The other laughed, slumming it. "Probably a phase. Or worse, she's naive enough to think he likes her for her personality and not the trust fund." Their cruel laughter echoed. Victoria wheeled into the break room, her presence silencing them immediately. "That man showed me more kindness in 1 hour than anyone in this building has shown me in 3 years. One executive straightened his tie, his voice cold. "Careful, Victoria. In our world, kindness has a price tag, and I guarantee he's already calculated yours. Men like that always do." Victoria returned home shaken. She researched James online, nothing suspicious, just a man rebuilding his life after tragedy. But then an email arrived from Marcus. The subject line read, "Friday's dinner, non-negotiable. Your father will be watching." Attached were surveillance photos, James's apartment building, his debt history, Sophie's school records, even time-stamped images of him at work sites. The message was clear. Stay away from James, or her father would make his life very difficult. Victoria stared at her phone where Sophie's voice message played. "Miss Victoria, I'm so excited for Friday. Daddy said he'll try to take off work, but even if he can't, you being there would make me so happy." The message ended with Sophie singing a wobbly, off-key version of Happy Birthday, the song she'd forgotten to sing at the diner. Victoria closed her eyes, torn between two worlds. Thursday evening, Victoria found herself at Riverside Diner again. Maybe by chance, maybe hoping. James walked in alone, looking exhausted. Their eyes met across the room. He slid into the booth across from her. "Sophie's with her grandmother tonight." Victoria nodded. "You okay? You look tired." James laughed bitterly. "Overtime Friday got canceled. Boss's nephew needs the hours instead. Can't catch a break." He paused, then smiled slightly. "But at least I can make Sophie's presentation now." Victoria's relief was visible, until James continued, pulling folded papers from his jacket. "Though I got served eviction papers today. We're 2 months behind on rent. 30 days to figure something out, or we're homeless." Victoria's mind raced. She could pay it easily, write a check, solve the problem. But she knew what that would mean, how it would look, what ammunition it would give her father. "James, I could—" "Don't," he said gently but firmly. "I see it in your eyes. Whatever you're thinking, don't. We're not your charity project, Victoria. We'll figure it out." "That's not what I meant, isn't it?" His voice was kind but honest. "You're a good person, but our worlds don't mix. I learned that a long time ago when Emma was alive. The people with money always want to help until it becomes inconvenient or complicated." Victoria wheeled closer, her voice urgent. "What if I don't care about worlds? What if I just care about this?" She gestured between them, the connection, the understanding, the way they'd both found something unexpected in each other. James looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment something passed between them. Possibility, hope, the fragile beginning of something real. Then his phone buzzed. Sophie's school. Emergency. She was sick, running a fever. He had to go immediately. "I'm sorry, I have to—" James stood, already moving toward the door. Victoria watched his truck speed away through the window, and she sat alone again in the same booth where her birthday had been. But this time, the empty chair felt different. Heavier. Through the glass, she watched his taillights disappear and realized with startling clarity. She was falling for him. And tomorrow she had to choose the shareholders' dinner that would secure her future in her father's empire, or a little girls' school presentation that might mean nothing to the world, but everything to a child who'd already lost too much. Victoria barely slept Thursday night. Friday morning, her father called from Shanghai via video conference. Richard Brennan looked tired but determined, his expensive suit perfectly pressed even across time zones. "Victoria, tonight you become the future of this company. The board needs to see strength, no weakness, no distractions." His eyes were hard, businesslike. "Dad, what if I don't want this?" Victoria's voice was quiet but steady. Richard's expression shifted, something almost like pain crossing his features before hardening again. "You think you don't. But I built this empire for you. After the accident, when the doctors said you'd never walk again, I promised myself you'd never need anyone. You'd have power, money, independence. Tonight proves that. Victoria leaned closer to the screen. What if independence isn't the same as being alone? Her father's jaw tightened. Alone is safe. Alone means no one can hurt you like... He stopped himself. Your mother left because she couldn't handle the pressure of this life. I won't lose you the same way, by letting you trust the wrong people. After he disconnected, Victoria sat in silence. Then her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Thought you should know. James Mitchell's late wife, Emma. She died in a car accident caused by a driver who worked for Brennan Industries. Your father's company settled quietly, paid the family through an anonymous trust. James never knew the connection. You might want to keep it that way. A friend. Victoria's hands shook violently. She accessed company records. She had clearance as future CEO. It took 20 minutes of searching, but there it was. 3 years ago, the same year as her own accident. A Brennan Industries employee, driving a company vehicle, ran a red light while texting. Emma Mitchell died at the scene. The company's legal team had moved quickly, establishing an anonymous trust fund for the surviving family, having them sign non-disclosure agreements through intermediaries who never mentioned Brennan's name. James had been receiving widow's benefits for 2 years without knowing the money came from the company responsible for his wife's death. Victoria made her decision. She arrived at Millbrook Elementary in her van, 15 minutes before Sophie's presentation. The school was modest, bright with children's artwork, filled with cheerful chaos that made her father's corporate tower seem sterile by comparison. She navigated to the gymnasium where parents gathered on folding chairs. Sophie spotted her and ran over, still looking pale from yesterday's fever, but glowing with excitement. You came? You really came? Behind her, James stood frozen, shock and something else. Gratitude, maybe hope, crossing his face. Victoria, your dinner. The shareholders? Victoria met his eyes steadily. This is more important. They sat together as children presented their hero projects. Some chose firefighters, others chose grandparents or teachers. When Sophie's turn came, she walked to the front with her poster board covered in photos. James at work sites, cooking breakfast, helping with homework, reading bedtime stories. Her voice was clear and proud. My hero is my daddy, because even when things are hard, he never gives up on me. He says being a hero isn't about being strong all the time. It's about showing up, even when you're tired. It's about loving people even when it's scary because you might lose them. My daddy lost my mommy, but he still loves me every single day. And that makes him the bravest person I know. Victoria's vision blurred with tears. The presentation ended with applause. As they stood to leave, Victoria's phone exploded with notifications. Bethany, Marcus, board members, all demanding to know where she was. She silenced every call. James pulled her aside near the gym doors, his voice low and urgent. You didn't have to sacrifice your career for a school presentation. Your father... I wanted to be here, Victoria interrupted. James, there's something I need to tell you. Something about Emma and my father's company. Before she could finish, a black town car pulled up outside the school entrance, visible through the gymnasium windows. Marcus stepped out, his face set in grim lines. He strode into the building, parents and teachers moving aside instinctively for his authoritative presence. He approached them directly, his voice carrying across the space. Miss Brennan, your father is on a plane back from Shanghai. He'll be at the dinner in 2 hours. You need to come immediately. Parents turned to stare. Sophie pressed closer to James, frightened by the tall man's intensity. Marcus leaned close to Victoria, but his voice was deliberately loud enough for James to hear. He knows you're here, and he knows about Mr. Mitchell's connection to the company settlement. If you don't come now, he's prepared to revoke the trust payments. That family will lose everything they've been receiving for 3 years. Victoria's face drained of color. James stiffened, confusion and dawning horror in his eyes. What settlement? What is he talking about? The parking lot felt too small, too exposed. Other parents were leaving with their children, casting curious glances at the obviously tense scene. Victoria tried to find words, but Marcus, sensing an opportunity to force her compliance, revealed just enough. The anonymous trust fund that's been supporting your family since your wife's death? Monthly payments, medical coverage for Sophie, the education fund? That was Brennan Industries. Compensation for an accident our employee caused. James staggered back as if physically struck. You knew? His voice cracked. All this time, you knew your family was responsible for Emma's death? Tears streamed down Victoria's face. No, I just found out this morning, I swear. I was trying to tell you. And you came here anyway? James's voice rose. Were you checking on your father's investment? Making sure the charity case was worth the monthly payments? Sophie started crying, confused and frightened. Parents whispered. Victoria reached toward James, her voice desperate. James, please. I came because I care about you. About Sophie. This has nothing to do with money or guilt or everything has to do with it. James shouted, then caught himself, his voice dropping to something worse than anger, bitter disappointment. Your family took Emma from us, threw money at the problem, and moved on. And now you. He couldn't finish, his jaw working. Marcus held up a tablet, showing a live feed of the shareholders' dinner. Richard Brennan stood at a podium in an expensive ballroom, addressing the crowd. My daughter has faced many challenges, but tonight she proves the strength of the Brennan name. She'll be here shortly to address you all. The camera showed an empty chair at the head table with Victoria's name card. Richard checked his watch, his expression tightening. Marcus shifted the screen to show another document. Termination of Mitchell Family Trust, pending authorization. Her father was prepared to destroy James's financial stability to teach her obedience. Victoria looked between the tablet and James's devastated face, then down at Sophie, who clutched Mr. Hopscotch and whispered through tears, Daddy, why is everyone so mad? Then Sophie looked up at Victoria with eyes full of confused hurt. Miss Victoria, are you leaving too? Like Mommy did? Sophie's innocent question shattered something in Victoria. She wheeled back to James, ignoring Marcus's impatient stance. You're right. My family caused you unspeakable pain, and I can't fix that. But Sophie just asked if I'm leaving like her mother did, and I realized that's what I've been doing my whole life, leaving before I could be left. Her voice shook but grew stronger. After my accident, my father threw money at everything. The best doctors, the perfect wheelchair, a penthouse designed for accessibility. But he never just sat with me, never asked what I actually needed. I think he's been doing the same thing to you, throwing money to avoid facing what his company did. James's anger wavered, confusion replacing some of the hurt. Victoria continued, her words tumbling out urgently. I'm not asking you to forgive my father, or even forgive me right now. But I am asking you to let me choose differently than he did. Let me show up, not with money or connections or fixing things from above. just by being here, being honest, being present. James looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the raw sincerity, the fear, the desperate hope. Before he could respond, Victoria's phone rang with her father's personal number. She answered on speaker, her hand trembling. Richard's voice was ice. "Victoria, you have 30 minutes to be at this dinner, or I will personally ensure that James Mitchell loses not just the trust payments, but his jobs, his apartment, everything. I will bury him so completely he'll never recover. You think you're helping him? You're destroying him. Come home now." The line went dead. Sophie whispered, "Is the bad man going to hurt us?" Victoria looked at James, then at the phone, then made a decision. "No, he's not." Victoria entered the Grand Hotel ballroom an hour late. Still in her casual clothes from the school presentation, no makeup, no diamond necklace, no polished corporate mask. James and Sophie walked beside her, Sophie clutching her father's hand and Mr. Hopscotch. The room fell into shocked silence. 200 shareholders, executives, and journalists turned as one. Richard stood at the podium, his face reddening with barely contained fury. "Victoria, what is the meaning of—" She wheeled directly to the microphone, her voice calm but carrying across the silent room. "I'm here to address the shareholders. May I?" Richard stepped aside, trapped by his own announcement. Victoria faced the crowd. Powerful people in expensive clothes, holding champagne glasses, judging her. "My father built Brennan Industries on a principle: never show weakness. But I'm here tonight to tell you that principle is wrong." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the ballroom. 3 years ago, I was in a car accident that left me paralyzed. My father responded by building walls around me, around himself, around this company. We became so focused on appearing strong that we forgot to be human. She gestured to James, standing awkwardly near the entrance with Sophie. "This man lost his wife because of our company's negligence. A Brennan Industries employee, driving distracted, killed Emma Mitchell. Instead of accountability, we offered silence and anonymous money. Tonight, my father threatened to destroy him financially if I didn't obey." Board members shifted uncomfortably. Journalists began taking notes rapidly. Victoria's voice grew stronger. "I don't know if I'm ready to lead this company, but I know what kind of leader I want to be. One who shows up, who faces mistakes, who values people over image. One who understands that real strength isn't hiding weakness. It's acknowledging it and choosing to do better." Richard moved to take the microphone. "My daughter is clearly emotional and unwell. This display proves she's not ready for leadership responsibility." He signaled security. But then something unexpected happened. An elderly woman stood from the back of the room. Eleanor Brennan, Victoria's grandmother and the company's founding partner who'd retired a decade ago, walked slowly toward the stage, her cane tapping against marble floors. Every eye followed her. "Richard, sit down." Her voice, though aged, carried absolute authority. Richard paled visibly. Eleanor, who controlled 40% of company shares through her retirement trust, had stayed silent for years. "I'd like to hear what Victoria has to say." She reached the stage, standing beside her granddaughter. "Continue, dear." With her grandmother's support, Victoria proposed an immediate ethics review and victim compensation program. She suggested the company publicly acknowledge past mistakes and establish genuine accountability measures, not just legal settlements designed to buy silence. The board, wanting to avoid public scandal and respecting Eleanor's backing, reluctantly agreed to consider it. Richard stormed out. but Eleanor touched Victoria's hand gently. "Your grandfather would be proud. He built this company on community values, not ego. I'm sorry I let it drift so far." As the crowd dispersed in uncomfortable whispers, James approached Victoria slowly. Sophie hung back, uncertain. "You didn't have to do that. You might have just destroyed your relationship with your father." Victoria's smile was sad, but genuine. "Maybe. But I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try. For Sophie, for Emma's memory, for myself." She paused, vulnerability clear in her eyes. "I know you can't forgive my father or the company easily. I'm not asking you to. But maybe we could try something honest. Real friendship, built on truth instead of secrets." James crouched beside her wheelchair, meeting her at eye level. His expression was complicated. Hurt still lingered, but something else was there too. Understanding, maybe. Respect. "I'd like that. Sophie would too." He glanced back at his daughter, who was watching them with cautious hope. "It won't be easy. There's a lot to work through." Victoria nodded. "I know. But I'm tired of easy. Easy is lonely." 2 weeks later, they sat together in the same corner booth at Riverside Diner. Victoria had coffee, James had his usual, and Sophie was working on her third milkshake, swinging her legs happily under the table. The past weeks had been difficult. Richard wasn't speaking to Victoria, the board was in turmoil, and James was still processing everything. But they'd been meeting regularly, talking honestly, rebuilding trust slowly. Victoria spread brochures across the table. "I found something. A therapeutic riding program about an hour from here. They help people with mobility challenges learn to ride again, and they have programs for children too. I thought maybe all three of us could try it. Sophie could learn. You could make sure we don't fall off, and I could maybe find something I thought I'd lost forever." Sophie bounced excitedly. "Really? We could ride horses together?" James laughed, the sound genuine and warm. "I've never been on a horse in my life. I'll probably be terrible." Victoria grinned. "Then we'll all be learning together." "That seems appropriate." Dottie appeared with a cupcake, a single candle flickering on top. "Heard someone missed making a proper birthday wish a few weeks back." She winked. Victoria looked at the candle, then at James and Sophie. Something warm and fragile and hopeful unfurled in her chest. "Actually, I think my wish already came true." Sophie leaned forward eagerly. "What did you wish for?" Victoria's eyes met James's across the table. "To not be alone anymore. To find people who see me. Not what I can't do, not what I'm worth, just me." James reached across the table, his hand stopping inches from hers, respecting boundaries but showing clear intent. His voice was soft but certain. "We see you, Victoria. All of you." Outside the diner windows, late afternoon sun streamed through, casting golden light across their table. Victoria blew out the candle. Sophie clapped. James smiled, a smile that promised healing, possibility, and something that might, with time and honesty, become love. The camera pulled back, showing the diner full of life, the small town continuing its rhythm, and three people learning that the strongest connections come from showing up, being honest, and choosing courage over fear.